Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Crew Travel right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I am your host, and I am pleased to welcome back the Gregarious Lee Harris. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks, Ria. Another new word, which I like, I've got to say. I have no idea what it means, so I'm hoping it's something nice.
Well, it is something nice. I'll let you Google it.
Okay, I'll do that afterwards. Thank you so much.
And I have to say that this Crew Travel is brought to you by Blue Marine Travel, who haven't lost a customer or passenger since Lee Harris was born back in the 70s.
Well done. Late 70s, we'll just add.
Yeah, I'm just going to stick with the 70s from now on because I saw it was your birthday the other day and I was the one that, made sure everybody realized exactly how old you were. You're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
So this week has been absolutely chaotic for you.
It has been. Yeah, it's been a complete and utter nightmare. I'm not going to lie. It's reminiscent of back March last year, let's just say, when it first kicked off. Countries go back into lockdown, mandatory quarantine coming into effect all over the show. So yeah, it's definitely been a difficult week, that's for sure.
Well, tell us what's going on in France. They've got a bunch of things happening there now.
Yeah, they have. The French government announced that it's closed its borders to travellers arriving from outside the European Union effective from the 31st of January. Any entry into France from countries outside the European Union will be prohibited. That came in midnight Sunday. Additionally, departures to or from overseas territories will not be permitted. However, and this is an important part for Crew, it is stated that compelling reasons travel will still be permitted. Now, I've reached out to Sarah Futisar at YPI Crew, who has confirmed that Crew do fall under the compelling reasons and are exempt from the restrictions. So that is some good news for them. For Crew, the rules are at this time as follows. They can enter France provided the vessel they are going to work on is in French waters. That's important. It has to be in French waters to enter the country. They can also transit to a third country provided they stay airside and on one ticket. There are a heap load of new forms that have to be completed for entry into France, dependent on where you start your journey from. So it's not a one-size-fits-all form now. It depends where you start your journey from. You have to fill in a certain form. There is a website to get that from, and we'll put that on social medias after the interview.
Wow. Well, do you know what? I mean, if we thought there was paperwork before, it just seems it's heaping on more and more and more. It is definitely getting way more difficult to travel. It
is. It's getting extremely difficult, that's for sure. Lots of paperwork, lots of tests to be done. Thankfully, the good news, I guess, is that people or Crew can still enter France. So they're not completely blanketed out like a lot of people. So that's one bit of good news. It just means that you've got to be on your game when you go to check in to make sure you've got everything lined up and what you need.
Yeah. And the UK, they're having some issues there now too.
Yeah, so the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has confirmed that there will be mandatory hotel quarantine imposed on travellers arriving from so-called red list countries. Travellers from these red zone countries would be met at the border and escorted directly to the government-mandated quarantine facility. It's a system very similar to the one that's placed in Australia at the moment. The current government red list comprises a total of 33 countries, including South Africa, Portugal, and South American countries. At the time of recording the interview, a date has not been set for when the mandatory quarantine will come into force. However, the cost will be passed on to the traveller and the fees are likely to be around £1,500. That's for a 10-day stay. As concrete information is still thin on the ground, it will be interesting to see whether there will be any exemptions for seafarers travelling back from work. Obviously, again, once we do have the information, we will bring it to you first on the show.
Wow. Another country that is putting the quarantine on people's shoulders or passengers' shoulders, really.
It is, yeah, and especially, again, it's the Crew who are going to get hit the hardest if they've got to go to and from work and they've got to pay £1,500 a time if they're coming from one of the red zone countries or even transiting through one of the red zone countries, then, it makes it extremely difficult, doesn't it?
Yeah. Emirates, what's going on with them?
Yeah, so the big Gulf carriers, Etihad and Emirates Airlines will temporarily end their UK flights on Friday. This is after the UK government put the United Arab Emirates on the red list that we've just talked about. After a country is placed on the red list, flights originating there cannot land in the UK. The travel ban does not include British and Irish nationals or third country nationals with resident rights in the UK. The UK government says British nationals currently in the UAE should use the commercial flight options available if they wish to return to the UK. Basically, what they're saying is that obviously the direct flights have been cancelled. You can't operate that up. You can't go on those. So you've got to find an indirect way to get back home. How that makes any sense, I have no idea. You can't fly directly out of Emirates into the UK, but you can if you go via another country. Baffles me, totally baffles me, but that's the rules been put in place. British and Irish nationals, all third country nationals with resident rights, will have to go into the mandatory quarantine once it comes into place if they've been through the UAE. As it's not in place at the moment, all they have to do is self-isolate at this time.
You know what? I think we say it every single week, though. If we could, if we ruled the world, we seem to sort a lot of things out of these chats. But I don't know how these massive airlines and the countries themselves cannot sort of come up with a concept that actually makes sense.
It just baffles me. Honestly, it baffles me every time I hear something new, and you just think, how does that make any sense whatsoever? Somebody who's flying from one place to another direct surely has got less chance of catching COVID than somebody who's got to get off a plane, go through an airport, and then get on another plane. Just crackers, completely crackers.
Yeah. And Canada, my home country.
Your home country, yes, they've announced new travel restrictions as well this week. So, like I said, it's been fun times. They're limiting flights to some destinations, and they are mandating quarantine at approved hotels for returning travellers as well. The Canadian Prime Minister announced the following new measures. So flights to the Caribbean and Mexico have been suspended until April the 30th. International flights now being limited to Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto and Montreal. There is mandatory testing at the airport. Inbound travellers will have to quarantine at a hotel for 3 days at their own expense in an approved hotel. After receiving a negative test result, passengers will then need to quarantine at home under increased surveillance and enforcement. If you return a positive result at any point during those 3 days you're in the hotel, you will then have to go into a designated governmental space for the following 7 days. According to reports, the cost is going to be around about 2,000 Canadian dollars. So they're all pitching around about the same price, these countries. And again, that lands on the passenger's head. This announcement of route suspensions, though, is a particular blow for super yacht crew looking to get to the Caribbean from Europe. I know us as a company, we've seen lots of people traveling the Toronto to Nassau route. So they're coming from Europe into Toronto, transiting and then going onwards. That route is now no longer available. So it's going to make it increasingly more difficult for European crew to get out.
Unbelievable. And crew travel questions. We have one of those this week.
We do. We received a question from Tara Hartz this week in relation to travel to Australia. Fun times for everybody. Unfortunately, Tara had her flights from Los Angeles to Sydney cancelled at the last minute with American Airlines. Currently, Tara's travel provider has only been able to waitlist any future flights due to the current demand. Now, Tara's question is it best to be on a waiting list for flights with the original operator, i.e. American Airlines, or is it best to ask for a refund and start from scratch again? There's no easy answer, in all honesty, to the question, I'm afraid, Tara. Obviously, personal circumstances are going to dictate what you can do. Whether you can hold flights on a wait list financially and then try and book something else, that would probably be the best way to do, but it's going to obviously cost you a lot more because you're going to be waiting for a refund whilst trying to book another flight. In my own personal experience, though, during this time, wait lists on flights to Australia are very rarely being confirmed by the airline. Almost nigh on impossible to get a wait list confirmed. What we as a company are doing, we regularly check throughout the day, the agents taking it in turns to go through the live flight availability. And what you'll see is on the odd occasion, one seat will pop up there, just an odd one. You won't get 5, 6, 7 or 8. There'll just be one seat there, which we can then grab for the clients that we know who are waiting for seats. That seems to be the better way to go than trying to wait this 6, 7, 8, 9 flights. Like I said, which in all honesty, you're not going to get, you're not going to get it confirmed. It's not going to happen. What we would also suggest, Tara, is to be as flexible as possible on the arrival airport into Australia. So, for example, you've said that you're trying to fly into Sydney. What we would also say is to look for flights into Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth and Brisbane. This then gives you 5 airports instead of 1 to try and get a seat on at a reasonable price. After you've done your 14 days quarantine in whichever city you land into, you're then free to travel domestically to your hometown.
Wow. I remember the days where, everybody would be flocking online to book their flights, and it was the cheapest and the quickest. But nowadays, it's literally impossible to do that. You need to go through, if you're just a tourist, you need to go through, you can't even be a tourist nowadays, but you have to go through somebody who can actually manipulate or work within the parameters and know the parameters, because you know, as we've seen this past week, you could book your flight in the morning and that flight could be canceled within 3 or 4 hours and then back on again 3 hours later. Like, you just don't know.
Exactly right. That's the thing, isn't it? You know, we've got people flying from the UK. They were flying with Etihad onward to Australia. And obviously, the announcement that the flights were being cancelled from the UAE to the UK, so they wanted to cancel their flights. And we said, look, no, hold your horses. You're not going for 3 weeks. Don't cancel them yet, because you've got no idea what's going to happen in those 3 weeks. Leave them up until the last minute as you possibly can, because things change at the drop of a hat. You know, you've got to be flexible. You've got to try and work like you know, up to the last minute as much as you possibly can, because it's just such a fluid, you know, situation that we're in at the moment. You know, nothing stays the same. You know, nothing straightforward, nothing simple. Unfortunately, that, you know, that is the reality of travel at the moment.
Well, and the amount of paperwork that you have to do. I mean, you know, personally, I would say, you know, not even necessarily through Blue Marine Travel, but if you are crew, work with somebody who can take you through every single step of every bit of paper that you need to take with you, that can make sure that you're routed through the right places. That means you won't be, you know, stranded in a country that you don't want to be stuck in. I mean, it just makes sense.
It does now, for sure. You know, I would, again, you know, I've said it many times. You know, there's no point in taking a risk on website search engines and all the rest of it, because we've talked about it before. They've not got the infrastructure in place to tell people what they can and can't do. And like you say, things are changing literally at the drop of a hat. You know, you could have a route, book a route in the morning, which is fine, and by the afternoon, 6 p.m., 7 p.m., that route no longer is available to you. Yeah. You know, and then, you know, if you're booking it on a search engine, you then got to find and try and get hold of people as well to see if they can help you. The likelihood is they're not going to be able to. So yeah, you know, for any crew out there who are traveling, I would thoroughly recommend a marine travel provider.
Well, Lee, I would say it's been a pleasure, but it really hasn't.
It's just been misery, isn't it?
You've just been misery guts this week. I don't even want to. I don't even want to talk to you next week. Forget it. I'm not going to talk to you.
Yeah, just forget it. Let's just have a month off.
There's no travel anymore because Lee's just miserable.
Yeah. No.
No, thank you so much for your information, and we will provide a lot of the information sites that Lee mentioned in this show below the interview when it airs, so that, you know, everybody has a little bit better of an idea of what they're looking forward to, or not.
Yeah. All you could be, you know, is be as informed as you possibly can. I mean, it is all you can do at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you, Lee, and yeah, we'll see you back here next week.
Always a pleasure. Let's hope I'm not quite so misery guts next week.
Yeah, fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Once again, you've been watching another edition of Crew Travel right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I have been your host. We'll see you again next week.